Every time a new From Software game releases, you start seeing articles like these, where some random game journalists ask for an easy mode. Anyone who is a fan of From Software games knows that one single reasonably challenging difficulty is an inseparable part of From Software's game design. So I will not be talking about whether From Software games should have an easy mode or not, because plenty of people have already made brilliant arguments on why they shouldn't. Instead, I want to explore what exactly makes games like, let's say, Sekiro difficult. What does an easy mode look like exactly? And why I think no game should have an easy mode. So let's start by talking about why Sekiro is so difficult. The answer to this question is very simple. Sekiro's rules are extremely rigid. This game requires that you pay attention and have a certain level of proficiency in every single game mechanic, or it will not allow you to progress at all. Sekiro is completely uncompromising. You need to know how to block, dodge, and counter, and you need to know when to perform these actions. If you try to dodge when you should block, you will die. If you try to block when you should dodge, you will die. And if you try to block when you should counter, yep, you guessed it, you will die. This game will simply not allow you to progress unless you learn its mechanics. Even if enemies did half as much damage as they currently do, you would still get destroyed if you're not blocking, dodging, or countering correctly. People want to make this game easier and say that it needs an easy mode, and that an easy mode will not affect the experience of those who choose to play the game on hard mode, but that is not true. Why? Well, let me explain. You see, an easy mode is not the same as an easy difficulty setting, because not all easy difficulty settings are created equal. Confused? I won't blame you if you are. It took me a while to realize the difference between an easy mode and an easy difficulty setting. Let me explain the concept of an easy mode using some examples. First, let's look at Doom Eternal. This game, like Sekiro, requires you to use all of the game's mechanics in every single fight, or it will kill you. This forces the player into something the creative director of this game calls the fun zone. And it works! If you engage with the game's mechanics, you will have tons of fun moving at high speed around the arena, breaking enemy weak points, switching weapons and comboing enemies, etc. It is a real spectacle, and the ultimate power fantasy. But thing is, this only applies to the higher difficulties. If you play the game on easy, you can just walk around, ignoring half the game's mechanics, shooting enemies with whatever, and still win. You are completely outside the fun zone, and honestly, this kind of gameplay is painfully boring to watch. This is what an easy mode looks like. Now allow me to give you an example of a game that has an easy difficulty, which is not an easy mode. Prince of Persia: Warrior Within offers an easy difficulty, which is not a true easy mode. On the easy difficulty, you take less damage and deal more damage to enemies. That's all. It's impossible for you to mash the attack button and win every single encounter, even on the easy difficulty, since the AI behaves in the same way it does on hard. It just does less damage and takes more. Being able to do more damage and taking less damage means nothing when you can't actually hit the enemy you're trying to fight. This game requires you to use all of the moves and combos available to you to beat combat encounters. For example, you can't just spam the attack button against the Crowmaster, since he will just block all of your attacks, counterattack, and eventually kill you like this. So you need to know how to block him and which moves you can use to create openings in his defense. The way you fight this enemy on both hard and easy is identical, since the AI behaves the same. So if you want to progress past him, you need to learn the game's combat mechanics. And it's not just this enemy that requires you to know what you're doing in combat. All of the enemies in this game do, so you can't just turn off your brain and just mash attack like in, let's say, God of War or Doom Eternal on the easiest difficulty. On top of all that, this game is full of environmental hazards and platforming that can insta-kill you, so you need to know how to move in this game and how to use your time powers effectively, or you will simply be unable to progress. Do you see the difference between an easy mode and an easy difficulty setting? An easy difficulty setting gives you more room for error, while still demanding you engage with all of the game's systems, while an easy mode allows you to ignore a large number of the game's mechanics and still progress. I've seen so many Doom Eternal playthroughs where streamers select I'm Too Young to Die or hurt me plenty, and get to mission 10 without using the meat hook, ice bomb, flame belch, or even upgrading their weapon mods. This is not how the developer intended for the game to be played at all, and they're missing out on all of the cool stuff you can do in Doom Eternal. There is nothing wrong with games having an easy difficulty, but there is plenty wrong with them having an easy mode. Many people seriously underestimate their own abilities, so they choose the easy mode and then play through an inferior version of the game that does not make them use the systems that are supposed to make the game fun in the first place. You can argue that some people just don't care about things like the gameplay mechanics and just want to experience the story, to which I would respond with, why are they playing video games then? If you just want a story, then you're much better off getting a Netflix subscription, reading a book, or just watching some streamer on Twitch or YouTube play through the game. Why bother playing it when playing a game is not what you want? Also, if developers need to design the game around difficulties where the game practically plays itself so that some people can just experience the story, they will have to take that into account with the actual level and enemy design, which will make the game as a whole a worse experience for people that actually want a game with mechanical complexity. If Prince of Persia had an easy mode, it would be a completely different game. Most of the environmental hazards and platforming would be gone, since they require timing and coordination. The AI needs to be completely redesigned so that enemies don't constantly try to block and counterattack, and you can beat them by just mashing attack. And yes, these changes will propagate to the higher difficulties, since making different versions of the AI and levels for each difficulty is time-consuming and expensive, so no developer would bother with that. This is why I think no game should have an easy mode. Do you agree? Disagree? Tell me in the comments. Like and subscribe if you liked the video, and see you in the next one.